Daniel Cooper's hands trembled over the Steinway's keys at 11:17 on a Tuesday night. The grand piano sat in Walsh Technology's main conference room like a museum piece. Polished, pristine, untouched, except by his cleaning cloth during nightly rounds. 15 floors above Chicago's South Loop, the building slept. Security dozed downstairs. The cameras on this floor had been broken for 3 weeks, maintenance tickets still pending. He'd checked. He always checked. His fingers found middle C without looking. Muscle memory from another lifetime. The opening notes of Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major emerged soft enough that only someone standing directly outside the door would hear. 13 years since he'd played for anyone but his daughter. 13 years since Carnegie Hall, since Juilliard, since the world called him promising. Now the world called him nothing, and that suited him fine. The melody unwound from somewhere deep in his chest, each phrase a conversation with ghosts. His professor's voice echoed, "You have the hands for this, Cooper." Touch like velvet over steel. Daniel's calluses scraped slightly against the ivory, hands that spent 10 hours a night pushing industrial mops, scrubbing toilets, emptying trash from offices where people earned more in a month than he'd see in 5 years. He didn't mind. The work was honest. It paid for Lily's specialists, her books in Braille, the studio apartment in South Side that leaked when it rained, but had good heating and neighbors who didn't ask questions about the blind girl whose father brought her to work because daycare closed at 6 and his shift didn't start until 7. The Nocturne built toward its central climax. Daniel's eyes closed. For 3 minutes and 40 seconds, he wasn't a janitor. He was the young man who'd stood on stage at Weill Recital Hall while 200 people held their breath. He was the scholarship student who'd practiced 8 hours daily in basement rooms at Juilliard, living on ramen and coffee, sleeping 4 hours a night, because music demanded everything and he'd gladly given it. Then the final chord resolved. Silence rushed back like water filling a hole. Daniel opened his eyes. The conference room materialized around him. Leather chairs worth more than his monthly rent, projection screen, motivational poster about synergy. His Navy custodian uniform felt suddenly heavy. The name tag pinned above his heart reading, Cooper in block letters. No first name, no story. He stood, returned to his cleaning cart in the hallway. His watch read 11:20. 30 minutes before Lily woke from her nap in the break room. 30 minutes before she'd ask, like she did every shift, "Did you practice today, Daddy?" And he could answer, "Yes, sweetheart, I practiced." The lie that wasn't quite a lie. Practicing implied hope of performing. Daniel had no such illusions, but his daughter didn't need to know that her father had traded Carnegie Hall for her, that Rachel, her mother, had looked at their newborn's sightless eyes and said, "I can't do this. This isn't the life I signed up for." 8 years ago, Lily was 4 months old. Rachel left on a Tuesday, walked out of their Brooklyn apartment with 2 suitcases and never looked back. No child support, no birthday cards, nothing. Daniel had learned to be enough. Mother and father both. Cooking, cleaning, doctor appointments, sleepless nights when Lily cried for a parent who'd chosen absence over difficulty. He'd learned to braid hair from YouTube tutorials, to read stories with different voices for each character, to explain colors to a child who'd never seen them. And he'd learned to kill the pianist inside himself. Or tried to. But some things wouldn't die. They just went underground, emerging at 11 p.m. in empty conference rooms when no one was watching. Except tonight, someone had been. Catherine Walsh stood frozen outside the conference room door, her hand halfway to the handle. She'd been about to interrupt, to ask who was playing, when she'd glimpsed him through the narrow window. The janitor, navy uniform, mop bucket visible in the hallway behind him, playing Chopin like he'd been born to it. Her father's favorite piece. The Nocturne he'd taught her when she was 16, 3 weeks before pancreatic cancer stole his last breath. Catherine had played it at his funeral, barely, through tears, her hands shaking so badly she'd missed half the notes. Then she'd locked her own piano and hadn't touched it since. 22 years. 22 years of running from the memory of Robert Walsh's hands guiding hers, his patient voice. Feel the phrase, Catherine. Music isn't about the notes. It's about the silence between them. She'd forgotten, built a company instead, made herself into someone who didn't need music, Didn't need feeling, didn't need anything except spreadsheets and quarterly reports and in the cold satisfaction of watching numbers grow. And now this janitor was playing her father's music in an empty room at midnight, playing it better than she'd ever managed. And Catherine couldn't breathe. She pulled back from the door, pressed her spine against the wall, made herself invisible as the music ended, as silence crashed back, as the janitor emerged and walked away pushing his cart. Unaware he'd just torn open a wound Catherine thought she'd cauterized long ago. Her hands were shaking. She looked down at them. Manicured nails, Cartier watch, pale skin that hadn't seen sun in months, and remembered her father's hands. Weathered, strong. Hands that had chosen teaching over touring, had chosen her over Carnegie Hall's summer series, though she'd only learned that 3 years ago when she'd finally opened his journal and read the entry dated 1 month before his death. I told him no. Catherine asked why I turned down the money. How do I explain? She's 13. She thinks I'm afraid of success. But success means nothing if you lose yourself, sweetheart. You're my masterpiece. Not any concert I could have played. Catherine had cried for 6 hours that day, then locked the journal in a drawer and gone back to work. She straightened now, smoothed her skirt. It was 11:30. She should go home. Should stop thinking about piano music and janitors who played like angels. Should focus on tomorrow's board meeting, the one where Graham Porter would present his efficiency initiative and she'd have to defend keeping certain positions that the spreadsheets said were expendable. Instead, she walked to the conference room, sat at the piano, lifted the fallboard with hands that remembered this motion even after 22 years, placed her fingers on the keys. Nothing happened. Her hands simply rested there, frozen, terrified. Catherine lowered the fallboard carefully, stood, left the room without looking back, but she returned the next night and the night after. Always at 11 p.m., always finding a shadow to hide in, always listening as the janitor. She'd learned his name from the door schedule. Daniel Cooper, night at custodian, shift 7 p.m., 3 a.m., played for 20 minutes before returning to his rounds. On the third night, she heard the child, "Daddy, when I play, I can see colors. Is that silly?" Daniel's voice came soft, infinitely patient. "No, sweetheart, that's magic." Catherine moved closer to the crack in the door. Through it, she saw a little girl sitting beside Daniel at the piano, 8 years old maybe, golden hair in a braid, dark glasses that meant something permanent, small hands on the keys, guided by larger ones. "Will you leave me like Mommy did?" The question was a knife. Catherine watched Daniel pull his daughter close, watched his face contort with love and pain. "Never, Lily. You're my whole world. I gave up everything for you. You already did, Daddy. And I'd do it again 1,000 times." Catherine's throat closed. She'd never wanted children, never understood the appeal. But watching this man with his blind daughter, watching him teach her piano in secret because presumably he couldn't afford lessons, watching him choose her over and over, she understood her father suddenly, understood the journal entry, understood sacrifice. She slipped away before they finished, left a coffee outside the custodian's closet with a note. "Thank you for the music." Next morning, a note on her office door. "You're welcome. But who are you?" Catherine didn't answer. How could she explain she was the CEO paying him $15.50 an hour? The woman who'd forgotten how to feel until a janitor and his blind daughter reminded her. She pulled his personnel file instead. Daniel James Cooper, age 35, single father, previous employment, dishwasher, barista, warehouse loader, delivery driver. 18 months at Walsh Technologies, perfect attendance, no disciplinary issues. But buried in the file, an application from 13 years ago. Education, Juilliard School, Bachelor of Music, Piano Performance, 2012. Catherine's coffee went cold in her hand. She spent her lunch hour on Google, found reviews. Rising star Daniel Cooper displays technical brilliance and emotional depth rare in one so young. Found a YouTube video from 2012. Daniel at 22 playing Rachmaninoff's second piano concerto at Weill Recital Hall. The audience gave him a standing ovation. The camera caught his smile, young, hopeful, certain the world was his. Then nothing. The trail went dark 8 years ago. No more performances, no more reviews, just silence. Catherine cross-referenced dates. Lily was 8, born blind, according to the emergency contact form, optic nerve hypoplasia, no corrective surgery possible. The timeline wrote itself. Daniel had given up his career for his daughter, had walked away from concert halls and recording contracts and whatever bright future Juilliard promised. Had chosen her over his dreams, like Catherine's father had chosen her. She closed the browser, stared at her office wall, at the Forbes 40 under 40 plaque, the framed photo of her shaking hands with Chicago's mayor, the shelf of awards that meant nothing suddenly. 22 years building a company. For what? Her phone buzzed. Graham Porter. Board meeting Friday 9 a.m. Efficiency review. Be ready to defend your positions. Catherine's stomach twisted. She knew what that meant. Graham had been pushing for workforce reductions for months. 15%. 47 people. She'd been fighting him, finding other savings, but he was right about one thing. The night custodian position was redundant. They had a day shift supervisor who could handle the work. The night janitor was technically unnecessary. Daniel Cooper was technically unnecessary. Catherine deleted the message, put her head in her hands, and tried very hard not to think about a little girl asking, "Will you leave me like Mommy did?" Friday morning arrived like an execution date. Catherine dressed in her armor, Armani suit, perfect hair, expression that gave nothing away. The boardroom was glass and steel, overlooking the Chicago River. 8 people waited. Graham Porter at the head, silver-haired and cold-eyed. Susan Yang, the CFO who'd never met an expense she couldn't cut. 6 others, venture capitalists and private equity veterans who saw people as line items. Graham started without preamble. We've identified 47 positions for elimination. 14.9% workforce reduction. Catherine's reviewed the list. He slid a folder across the table. Catherine opened it, recognized names, good people, Maria in accounting who brought cookies every Friday, Tom in IT who'd help move her office furniture on a Sunday, Raj, Kevin, Stephanie, all people she'd hired, trained, trusted. Daniel Cooper's name wasn't on the list. Where's the night custodian? Graham's voice cut through her relief like glass. Daniel Cooper, that's position 48, easiest cut we have. He's reliable, hardworking, perfect attendance for 18 months. He's a janitor, Catherine. No degree, no specialized skills. We can have the day supervisor handle his work. Susan Yang leaned forward. He brings his disabled child to work. Liability issue. What if something happens? We're exposed. Catherine felt heat rising in her chest. We're exposed to what, exactly? A lawsuit because a man loves his daughter? We're exposed to the appearance of poor judgment. Graham's tone went flat. But this isn't really about Cooper, is it? Let me tell you what this is about. He stood, walked to the window, looked out at the river, hands clasped behind his back. 3 months ago, Vanguard Capital approached us about acquisition. $340 million. They want aggressive cost-cutting first, want to see if we're serious about efficiency. And they specifically asked, he turned, eyes locking on Catherine, if our CEO has the stomach for tough decisions. The room went silent. This janitor is a test case. Fire him. Prove you can make hard calls, and the deal moves forward. Everyone here makes millions. Or refuse. Graham's smile was sharp. And we vote you out. Derek Hammond's already agreed to step in. He'll fire Cooper and 200 others by Monday. Catherine's heart hammered against her ribs. This wasn't about Daniel. This was about control, about proving she could prioritize profit over people, about becoming the kind of leader who saw human beings as resources to be optimized. She thought of her father's journal. Success means nothing if you lose yourself. She thought of Daniel's voice. I gave up everything for you, and I'd do it again 1,000 times. She thought of Lily. Will you leave me like Mommy did? You have 48 hours. Graham returned to his seat. Add Cooper to the list or we replace you. Meeting adjourned. Catherine gathered her papers with hands that wanted to shake, walked to her office with a spine that wanted to bend, closed the door and stood at the window, staring at the city she'd conquered. Conquered. As if success were a war and she the victor. As if the bodies in her wake, the missed dinners, the broken marriage, the friendships abandoned for conference calls, were acceptable casualties. Her father had chosen her over Carnegie Hall. What would he choose now? Catherine pulled out her phone, called her assistant. Clear my schedule. I need the weekend. Is everything all right, Ms. Walsh? No, but it will be. She left the office at 3 p.m., unheard of, drove to her penthouse in Lincoln Park, stood in the doorway staring at the Steinway in the corner, dust-covered and silent. She'd bought it when Walsh Technologies hit its first million. Thought success would make her want to play again. Thought if she could just achieve enough, be enough, matter enough, the music would return. But music didn't care about achievement. It cared about truth. Catherine opened the piano bench. Inside, her father's sheet music, yellowed and dog-eared, the Chopin nocturne on top, his handwriting in the margins. Rubato here, don't rush, let it breathe. She lifted the fallboard, sat, placed her fingers on middle C. Nothing. Tried again. Still nothing. Her hands remembered the positions, but not the feeling. The technique, but not the soul. Catherine stood, paced her living room, poured a glass of wine at 4 p.m., then another at 6, watched the sun set over Lake Michigan, and thought about the choice Graham had given her. Fire Daniel or lose everything. Except she'd already lost everything that mattered. Her father, her music, herself. She traded them all for corner offices and board meetings, and the hollow satisfaction of being called successful by people who measured worth in dollars. At 2 a.m., Catherine found herself at her father's journal. She'd read it once, 3 years ago, couldn't bring herself to read it again. But tonight she opened it, flipped to the entry she remembered. March 15, 2003. Carnegie Hall called. Summer series, 8 performances, $50,000. Catherine asked why I said no. How do I explain? She's 13. She thinks I'm afraid of success. Maybe I am, but not in the way she imagines. Success means nothing if you lose yourself, sweetheart. Music chose me, but I chose you. Rachel left when you were 3, said being married to a professor was beneath her. For 13 years, it's been us, and I wouldn't change one moment. Carnegie Hall will always be there. Your childhood won't. If you ever read this, you are my masterpiece. Not any concert I could have played, not any acclaim I could have earned. You, Catherine closed the journal, walked to the piano, sat down, lifted the fallboard. This time her fingers found the opening notes of the nocturne, rusty, uncertain, wrong notes in the second measure. But there, present, alive. She played through tears, through 22 years of grief and loss and running. Played until her hands cramped and the sun rose over the lake, and she understood finally what her father had been trying to teach her. It wasn't about the music. It was about the choice to love something more than yourself. Saturday morning, Catherine drove to Walsh Technologies in jeans and a sweater, clothing her employees had never seen her wear. The security guard did a double take. Ms. Walsh, it's Saturday. I know. Is the night custodian here? Daniel? Yeah, he does weekend shifts. Basement level. Catherine had never been to the basement. Executive elevators didn't reach that far. She took the stairs, concrete and institutional, smelling of cleaning solution and old paint. The fluorescent lights buzzed. At the bottom, a narrow hallway led to supply closets and break rooms. She found Daniel in a storage room, inventory clipboard in hand. He looked up when she entered. Surprise flickered across his face before settling into careful attention. Can I help you? He didn't recognize her. Catherine realized she'd been careful to stay invisible during those late-night listening sessions. And now, in casual clothes, she was just another office worker he'd never met. I'm Catherine Walsh, the CEO. Recognition dawned slowly. Daniel straightened, set down his clipboard. Oh, is something wrong? Catherine's prepared speech dissolved. She stood in a basement supply room, wearing jeans about to destroy a man's life, and couldn't find the words. I need to talk about something important. The company is making budget cuts. Your position is being eliminated. She watched his face, saw the moment the news hit, saw him absorb it with quiet dignity that made her want to scream. I understand. When? Effective immediately. Daniel nodded, looked around the supply room as if seeing it for the last time. I appreciate you telling me in person. That's kind. The word kind was a blade. Catherine forced herself to continue. I'm sorry, it's just business. I know. His voice cracked slightly. I'll find another job, but he stopped. Catherine waited. But I won't find another place with a piano for Lily. Catherine's breath caught. How do you know I know about Lily? Daniel's eyes widened. Then understanding crossed his face. The coffee, the jasmine perfume. Lily told me weeks ago, an angel is listening to us play, Daddy. She has better senses than most people with sight. He met Catherine's gaze directly. I knew it was you, the CEO who works until midnight every night, who stands outside the conference room like music is the only thing keeping her alive. Catherine couldn't speak. Daniel continued, voice soft now. I knew you were there, and I let you listen, because I thought, maybe you needed it as much as I needed to play. Something in Catherine's chest cracked open. You knew I'm a janitor, Ms. Walsh. People don't see me, but I see them. I've watched you these past 3 weeks. How you stand outside that door. How you cry sometimes. How you never come in. He picked up his clipboard again. Lily's audition is in 2 weeks, Fulton Community Center. Full scholarship if she makes it. I've been preparing her every night. His voice broke on the last word. Now I have to tell her we can't come here anymore. That I failed her. Catherine sat heavily on a supply crate. The basement felt too small suddenly. Too hot. She thought of Lily's question. Will you leave me like Mommy did? How do you do it? The question came out raw. Give up everything for her? Daniel looked surprised. I didn't give up everything, Ms. Walsh. I found everything. Lily is my masterpiece. Not any concert I could have played. The words were identical to her father's journal entry. Catherine felt tears sting her eyes. What did you give up? Daniel asked gently. What? You play piano. I can tell by how you stand in doorways. Posture of someone who knows music. But you don't anymore. So what did you give up? Catherine looked at this man, this janitor, this Juilliard graduate, this father who'd sacrificed everything, and felt the walls she'd built for 22 years begin to crumble. My father was a pianist, taught at Northwestern. He died when I was 16. I stopped playing, built a company instead, thought success would fill the space he left. Did it? No, Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then, we build fortresses when we lose people. Mine was being the perfect father to compensate for an absent mother. Yours was being the perfect CEO to compensate for an absent father. But fortresses keep everyone out, including ourselves. Catherine stood. Her hands were shaking. I should go. I'm sorry about your job. Ms. Walsh? Daniel's voice stopped her at the door. Thank you for telling me yourself. Most people would have just had HR send an email. That took courage. Catherine walked out without answering, took the stairs back up, 15 floors, needing the burn in her legs to distract from the pain in her chest. When she reached her office, Graham Porter was waiting inside. Well, he demanded, did you fire him? Catherine looked at the termination papers on her desk, at Daniel Cooper's name highlighted in red. She thought about Lily asking if her father would leave her, thought about her own father's journal. You are my masterpiece. Thought about what kind of person she wanted to be when she looked in the mirror. No. Graham's face went purple. Excuse me? I'm not signing these, and I'm not firing anyone else on this list. Then you're fired, Catherine, effective immediately. Catherine opened her desk drawer, started packing personal items into a box. No need. I quit. The words hung in the air like smoke. Graham stared as if she'd lost her mind. You're throwing away everything you built. Catherine picked up the photo of her father, the only personal item she kept in this office. His smile looked back at her, proud and gentle. No, I'm finally building something that matters. This is professional suicide. This is freedom. She filled the box with what little remained. Her Northwestern diploma, a music box that played Chopin, a smooth stone from the beach where her father had taught her to skip rocks. When she was done, she turned to face Graham. Daniel Cooper is worth more than this entire company. He sacrificed everything for love. What have we sacrificed? Our souls, our humanity, our ability to see people as anything other than resources to be optimized. Graham's voice went cold. You're going to regret this. Maybe. Catherine picked up her box. But I won't regret becoming someone my father would be ashamed of. She walked out of her office for the last time. Employees watched from cubicles, whispering. Catherine didn't care. She'd spent 22 years living for their approval, for the board's approval, for the market's approval. And where had it gotten her? Alone in a corner office, signing termination papers, forgetting how to play piano. The elevator ride down felt like falling and flying simultaneously. When the doors opened on the ground floor, Catherine went straight back to the basement corridor, back to the supply room where she'd broken a good man's world. Daniel was still there, sitting on a stepladder, head in his hands. He looked up when she entered. Confusion and weariness warred on his face. I quit. Daniel stood. What? I just walked out. Resigned. Told Graham Porter where he could put his efficiency initiative. Catherine laughed, a sound of disbelief and liberation. I'm unemployed, Daniel, just like you. Why would you do that? Because you reminded me of something I'd forgotten. My father taught me to play piano when I was little. Told me music was the language of the soul. That if I ever lost myself, I just needed to sit at a piano and find my way home. She met Daniel's eyes. I lost myself 22 years ago. Built a career instead. Forgot why I was building anything at all. Then I heard you playing with Lily and I remembered. Daniel shook his head slowly. You gave up your company for me. You don't even know me. I gave up my company for myself. Catherine corrected gently. But I'm hoping to change that second part. The not knowing you part. Before Daniel could respond, a small voice called from the hallway. Daddy, are you in here? Lily appeared in the doorway, white cane tapping ahead. A woman from the building daycare followed close behind. Sorry, Mr. Cooper, she insisted on finding you. Daniel moved to his daughter immediately, kneeling beside her. I'm here, sweetheart. Everything's okay. You're sad. Lily tilted her head. Your voice sounds sad. And there's someone else here. The angel lady. Catherine froze. How did you? Lily smiled. You smell like jasmine. Same as the coffee you left for Daddy. And your shoes make clicking sounds. Really fast. I've heard you outside the conference room. You listen to us play. She turned her sightless eyes toward Catherine. Are you the lady who's going to help us? Catherine knelt to Lily's level. Her throat felt tight. Help you how, sweetheart? Last night I had a dream. An angel with a sad voice said she needed our help to remember how to fly. And we needed her help too. Lily's expression was serious beyond her years. You're her, aren't you? Catherine looked at this child, this brave, talented, beautiful child, and felt something shift in her chest, the final piece of her fortress crumbling. I don't know about being an angel, but your daddy and I both lost our jobs today, so maybe we do need each other's help. Lily's face lit up. Can we still play piano? The simple question broke something open in Catherine's chest. She looked at Daniel over his daughter's head, saw the same fear and hope warring in his expression that she felt in her own heart. Yes, Catherine made a promise she had no idea how to keep. Yes, Lily, you can still play piano. Lily threw her arms around Catherine's neck. The hug was fierce and trusting and terrifying. You really are an angel. Catherine hugged the small body close. Over Lily's shoulder, she met Daniel's eyes, saw shock and gratitude, and something else she couldn't name. Something that felt like the beginning of everything. That evening, Catherine invited Daniel and Lily to her penthouse. The words came out before she'd fully thought them through, standing in that basement supply room with Lily's arms around her neck and Daniel watching with an expression she couldn't decipher. The drive from Southside took 40 minutes in Saturday traffic. Daniel's 15-year-old Honda Civic rattled at stoplights, and Lily sat in back singing quietly to herself. Some melody Catherine didn't recognize, probably something Daniel had taught her. Catherine followed in her Tesla, feeling the absurdity of the procession. A CEO's car trailing a janitor's rust bucket through neighborhoods that grew progressively wealthier until they reached Lincoln Park. Her building's doorman raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. The elevator ride to the 20th floor stretched in silence, broken only by Lily's running commentary. It smells different here, Daddy. Like lemons and something expensive. The penthouse door opened onto 2,000 square feet of deliberate emptiness. Minimalist furniture, white walls, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. No photographs, no clutter. Nothing that suggested a human being actually lived here rather than just existing between board meetings. Lily's hands found the Steinway before Catherine could offer a tour. The child moved through the space with her cane, methodical and certain, until her fingers brushed the piano's polished surface. "Daddy, there's a piano here!" Daniel's breath caught audibly. He crossed to where his daughter stood, his work boots loud on the hardwood. His hand traced the Steinway's curve with something like reverence. Modeled Catherine watched him recognize the instrument, saw his face do complicated things. "My father gave it to me." "Not exactly gave. I bought it when Walsh Technologies hit its first million. Told myself success would make me want to play again." She didn't finish the thought. Didn't need to. The dust on the fallboard spoke clearly enough. "Can I play it?" Lily's question pulled at something in Catherine's chest. The child's face was so hopeful, so unaware that permission had never been required, that Catherine couldn't speak for a moment. "Please." Lily climbed onto the bench. Her small hands found the keys, pressed middle C tentatively. The sound filled the space, rich, full, impossibly pure. Lily gasped. "Sounds like sunshine." She played a scale, then another, growing bolder with each successful progression. Daniel stood beside the piano, not touching it, just watching his daughter discover joy in expensive acoustics. His expression made Catherine understand something about love she'd never grasped before, that it could be both fierce and gentle, protective and freeing all at once. When Lily finished her scales, she turned her face toward Catherine with eerie accuracy. "Your turn. I can't. Please." The word carried weight beyond its syllable. "Daddy says music is better when you share it." Catherine's legs carried her to the piano before her brain approved the decision. She sat beside Lily on the bench, their hips touching. The child's hand found hers, squeezed once. "Just feel it. Don't think." Catherine closed her eyes, let her fingers drop to the keys. The opening notes of the nocturne emerged, hesitant, imperfect, raw. She stumbled in the fourth measure, stopped, started again. Then Daniel's hands joined hers, his fingers finding the lower register, supporting the melody. Lily added harmony in the treble, small fingers dancing across keys she couldn't see but somehow knew. Three people who'd been strangers 48 hours ago, creating something together that none of them could have made alone. When the piece ended, Catherine opened her eyes to find Lily beaming. "See? You didn't need to see the notes. You felt them." Catherine laughed through tears. "You're very wise, Lily. I know." The child's confidence was absolute. "Can we eat now? I'm hungry." They ordered pizza from a place Daniel insisted on, some South Side joint that delivered to Lincoln Park with obvious reluctance. Ate on Catherine's living room floor because it felt wrong to use the dining table she'd never once sat at. Lily told stories about school, about her teacher, Ms. Patterson, who sang off-key and always smelled like cinnamon. Daniel added details about his evening shifts, the small kindnesses he'd witnessed between coworkers who thought no one was watching. Catherine contributed little, listened instead, tried to remember the last time she'd eaten a meal with other humans that wasn't a business dinner. Couldn't. Eventually, Lily fell asleep on the couch, curled into herself like a question mark. Daniel draped his jacket over her, careful not to wake her. When he turned back, Catherine was standing at the windows, staring at the city lights reflected in the lake. "What will you do now?" His voice came quiet, not wanting to disturb his daughter's sleep. "About work?" Catherine had been asking herself that question for 6 hours. Had no answer that made sense. "I have savings, enough to last a while. Honestly, I don't know." She glanced at Lily's sleeping form. "What about you?" Daniel's shrug tried for casual and failed. "Look for another job. Service industry, probably. Restaurant work. Maybe warehouse loading. Whatever has hours that work around Lily's school." He looked at his daughter, and Catherine saw the fear underneath his calm. "Hardest part is telling her we can't do piano lessons anymore. I can't afford a real teacher. And without access to that conference room," his voice trailed off. Catherine's mind was already racing, connecting dots, seeing possibilities where most people would see only obstacles. This was what she did, or had done, turned problems into solutions, found the angle no one else considered. What if you didn't have to stop? Daniel's head snapped toward her. "Catherine, no, listen." She moved away from the window, energy building. "What if we started a music school? For kids like Lily, children with disabilities who don't get opportunities because the system isn't built for them. Free lessons, no barriers. That's a beautiful dream. But dreams need funding. I have funding. Savings, investments, a severance package Graham's probably regretting offering right now. What I don't have is purpose or any idea how to actually run a music school. You want me to help you? I want you to run it. Catherine sat on the arm of her couch, careful not to disturb Lily. Be music director. Design the curriculum. Teach the students. You're the one with the Juilliard degree and the gift for teaching. I'll handle the business side, permits, funding, marketing, all the corporate machinery I know too well. Daniel shook his head slowly, but Catherine saw something kindle in his eyes. Hope, maybe, or terror, possibly both. Why would you do this for me? 3 days ago, I was ready to fire you to save my position. Catherine's honesty cut through the room's darkness. Today I walked away because I realized I've spent 22 years building something I thought mattered, building it wrong, building it empty. She met his eyes across the dim space. Let me spend the next 22 building something right. Lily stirred on the couch, mumbled something incoherent, settled back into sleep. Daniel watched his daughter for a long moment before responding. She deserves opportunities I can't give her alone. Real training, professional instruction, a chance to develop her gift beyond what I can teach in stolen moments. His gaze returned to Catherine. Yes, okay, let's try this. They shook hands. Catherine felt calluses rough against her palm, the physical evidence of 8 years spent cleaning other people's spaces. Felt something shift in her chest. Not quite attraction, not yet, but recognition. Two people who'd lost themselves finding each other in the wreckage. From the couch, Lily's voice drifted sleepy and certain. I told you, the angel needed our help to fly him. 3 months later, Catherine understood that hope was a currency that bought nothing in the real world. The converted garage they'd rented in Pilsen cost $800 monthly and smelled perpetually of motor oil. 4 students attended lessons, Lily plus 3 children from Fulton Community Center's waiting list, all with disabilities that made traditional music education impossible or unaffordable. Daniel taught with a patience that bordered on superhuman. A 6-year-old boy with autism who couldn't tolerate loud sounds learned to find the piano's whisper voice, playing so softly the notes barely emerged. A 12-year-old girl with cerebral palsy struggled to control her hands, but discovered she could play bass notes with her left foot on a modified pedal. A 9-year-old deaf child felt rhythms through vibrations, her body becoming the metronome. Catherine handled everything else, which meant discovering that running a nonprofit music school required navigating bureaucratic mazes that made corporate law look simple. Business licenses, zoning permits, accessibility certifications, fire safety inspections, ADA compliance reviews, insurance policies that cost more than the rent because apparently teaching children with disabilities was considered high risk. She worked 16-hour days and felt more alive than she had in 2 decades. But alive didn't pay bills. By month 3, they had burned through $40,000 of Catherine's savings. The garage was adequate for 4 students but couldn't scale. They needed real space, a proper location with multiple practice rooms, accessible bathrooms, parking for parents with mobility issues. Catherine spent mornings calling landlords, afternoons getting rejected. Music school for disabled kids? That's a liability nightmare. What if one of them gets hurt? We can't take that risk. Maybe try the suburbs. Chicago's too expensive for charity work. The 15th rejection came on a Tuesday. Catherine sat in her Tesla outside a warehouse in West Loop, staring at her phone, feeling the weight of other people's dreams pressing against her chest. Daniel was counting on her. Lily was counting on her. 3 other children and their families were counting on her, and she was failing. Her phone rang. Graham Porter. She'd blocked him after leaving Walsh Technologies, but apparently he'd gotten a new number. Catherine let it ring through to voicemail. Listened to the message later. Catherine, it's Graham. We need to talk about your little project. Call me back. She deleted it without responding. That evening, she attended Lily's lesson at the garage. The girl had progressed remarkably in 3 months, playing scales with confidence, tackling simple pieces with growing complexity. But she was ready for more, ready for proper instruction beyond what a converted garage could offer. How's the space search going? Daniel asked after the students left. He was wiping down piano keys with the same care he'd once given to Walsh Technologies' conference room piano. Catherine couldn't lie to him. Not well. We've been rejected by 15 landlords. Nobody wants the insurance exposure. Daniel stopped cleaning. His shoulders tensed in a way Catherine had learned to recognize as him processing bad news while trying not to show Lily his worry. How long can we keep going here? Maybe 2 more months. Then we'll need to figure something else out. The something else hung unspoken between them. Giving up. Returning to their separate lives. Daniel finding another custodian job. Catherine maybe going back to corporate consulting. Lily losing her music education again. The thought made Catherine physically ill. She spent that night at her penthouse creating a spreadsheet of every commercial property in Chicago that might work, cross-referenced against zoning laws, accessibility requirements, proximity to public transportation. By 3 a.m., she had a list of 8 possibilities. By the end of the following week, she'd been rejected by all 8. On Friday, Daniel came to her apartment, the first time he'd visited without Lily. The girl was at a sleepover with a school friend, rare and precious. Daniel looked exhausted, the kind of tired that sleep wouldn't fix. I need to tell you something. He sat on her couch without invitation, his usual careful politeness abandoned. I'm not sure we can keep doing this. Catherine's heart dropped. What do you mean? I mean Lily's audition for Fulton Community Center is in 2 weeks. If she gets the scholarship, she'll have professional instruction there. Real teachers with credentials. A proper program. His hands twisted together. Maybe that's the better path. Maybe trying to build this school is just, I don't know, pride, ego, me wanting to be something I'm not anymore. Catherine sat beside him, close but not touching. You are a Juilliard graduate who played Carnegie Hall. You are a gifted teacher who's changed 4 children's lives in 3 months. What aren't you? Enough, the word came out broken. I'm not enough to make this work. You've spent $40,000 and gotten nowhere. Maybe it's time to admit defeat. The defeat in his voice cut deeper than any board meeting ambush. Catherine recognized it. The voice that whispered late at night that all your efforts were futile, that you should have stayed safe, that risk was just another word for inevitable failure. My father turned down Carnegie Hall for me. Catherine hadn't planned to share this, but the words came anyway. $50,000, 8 performances, summer series. He said no because it would have meant months away from a 13-year-old girl who'd already lost her mother. Daniel's hands stilled. I didn't know, I didn't either until 3 years ago. Found his journal after his death. He wrote, "You are my masterpiece." Not any concert I could have played. Catherine turned to face Daniel directly. You told me the same thing about Lily, that she was your masterpiece. Do you still believe that? Of course. Then believe this too. Harmony House is part of that masterpiece. Your ability to teach, to connect, to see these children as whole people rather than limitations. That's a gift, Daniel. Rarer than perfect pitch or technical brilliance. And it deserves a proper space to flourish. She stood, energy returning. Lily's audition is in 2 weeks? Fine, we keep trying for 2 weeks. I'll call every landlord in Chicago if I have to. And if we haven't found something by then, we'll reassess. But we don't quit tonight. Daniel looked up at her with something like wonder. Why are you doing this? Really? Because my father chose me over his career and never regretted it. Catherine's voice went quiet. Because you chose Lily over yours and built something beautiful anyway. Because I spent 22 years measuring success wrong, and I'm tired of it. Because she stopped. The next words felt too large, too soon. Because somewhere in the past 3 months, between rejected permits and piano lessons in a garage that smelled like motor oil, she'd started to care about this man and his daughter in ways that terrified her. Because this matters, the safest version of the truth. We matter. What we're building matters. Daniel stood. They were close now, close enough that Catherine could see exhaustion written in the lines around his eyes. Close enough that when he reached out and took her hand, she felt the tremor in his fingers. Thank you. Not for the encouragement, for something deeper. For seeing him as more than what the world had reduced him to. For believing when belief felt impossible. Catherine squeezed his hand once. Let go before the moment could become something neither of them was ready to name. Go home. Get some sleep. Monday, we keep looking. Monday brought a call back from a landlord she'd contacted 3 weeks prior. Howard Cho owned a warehouse in West Loop, 3,000 square feet with high ceilings, good bones, terrible lighting. He'd initially declined because of insurance concerns. Now he wanted to meet. Catherine and Daniel arrived at 10 a.m. The space was raw but promising. Concrete floors, exposed ductwork, windows that hadn't been cleaned in years. But the acoustics were extraordinary. Daniel clapped once and the sound resonated like a bell. Howard Cho was 68, Vietnamese American, wearing dress slacks and a cardigan despite the May heat. He walked the space slowly, pointing out features. The electrical panel that needed updating, the HVAC system that worked but wheezed, the loading dock that could be converted to a ramp. Rent is $3,500 monthly. His voice carried an accent softened by decades in Chicago. But I need to know you're serious. I've seen too many nonprofits start with good intentions and fold in 6 months. Catherine opened her laptop, showed him their business plan. 30 pages of financial projections, curriculum outlines, student recruitment strategies. Daniel added his credentials, the Juilliard diploma he'd kept in a drawer for 13 years. Howard studied the documents in silence. Then, my son was born with cerebral palsy 42 years ago. Doctors said he'd never walk, never talk, never be independent. He looked up from the laptop. They were wrong about everything. David's a software engineer now, married, 2 kids, house in Evanston. But when he was young, nobody would teach him anything. Every school, every program, they looked at his wheelchair and saw limits. Howard's eyes moved between Catherine and Daniel. One teacher believed in him, Mrs. Chen at Roosevelt Elementary. She spent her lunch hours teaching David to read when everyone said it was pointless. Changed everything. He handed back the laptop. $2,000 a month. I'll waive the first 2 months to give you time to get established. But I need one promise. You don't give up on these kids. Ever. Even when it's hard, even when the money runs tight. You stick with them. Catherine's throat tightened. We promise. Then you have a space. They signed the lease that afternoon. Spent the next week transforming the warehouse. Painting walls pale yellow at Lily's suggestion because that color sounds happy. Installing proper lighting. Building practice rooms with sound dampening. Setting up a small reception area. Daniel's construction knowledge, gleaned from years of odd jobs, proved invaluable. He built wheelchair-accessible piano benches, installed tactile markers on the floor for students with vision impairments, created storage for specialized equipment. Catherine handled permits and inspections with renewed determination. Called in favors from her corporate days. Found a pro bono lawyer willing to help with 501(c)(3) paperwork. Discovered grants for disability-focused arts programs. On opening day, 7 students enrolled. By week 2, 15. Word spread through Chicago's disability community like wildfire. There was a place now, a place that said yes instead of no. A place where children weren't defined by what they couldn't do. Daniel flourished. Catherine watched him teach a 9-year-old boy with Down syndrome to play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, with such patience and joy that she had to leave the room before anyone saw her crying. Watched him help a girl with muscular dystrophy discover she could play bass notes with her elbow when her hands grew too tired. Watched him become the teacher he was always meant to be. And somewhere in the chaos of building and teaching and growing, Catherine caught herself watching Daniel in ways that had nothing to do with nonprofit administration. The way his face lit when a student had a breakthrough. The way he'd hum while installing soundproofing. The way he looked at her across crowded rooms and smiled like they shared a secret the rest of the world couldn't understand. She told herself it was gratitude, partnership, respect. She was lying. Lily's audition arrived on a Sunday afternoon in late June. Fulton Community Center's recital hall held 200 people but felt intimate with its wood paneling and soft lighting. 8 children were auditioning for 3 scholarship spots. The judges sat in the front row. Dr. Patricia Reeves from DePaul University, Marcus Kim from Chicago Symphony Orchestra, and Grace Washington, who'd founded Fulton Center 30 years ago. Daniel paced the hallway outside, his nervous energy contagious. Catherine stood beside him, wanting to offer comfort, but unsure how. They'd maintained careful boundaries over the past 3 months, professional, friendly, never crossing the invisible line into something more complicated. She'll be brilliant. Catherine tried for confidence she didn't feel. Lily was talented but young. The other auditioners were older, more experienced. What if I didn't prepare her enough? Daniel's voice carried all his fear. What if she freezes? What if? Then she'll have learned something valuable. Catherine caught his arm, made him look at her. But she won't freeze. You've taught her to be brave. That matters more than perfect technique. The door opened. A volunteer called, Lily Cooper? Daniel guided his daughter into the recital hall, got her settled at the piano, adjusted the bench, whispered something Catherine couldn't hear. Kissed the top of Lily's head. Then he had to step back. Rules were clear about parental involvement during auditions. Lily sat alone at the piano, so small she looked lost. Her hands found the keys, positioned themselves. She took a breath. I'm playing Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. Catherine's breath stopped. That was her father's piece. Daniel's piece. The piece that had connected them all. Lily began. The opening bars emerged delicate and sure. Her technique was solid. 3 months of intensive practice showing in every phrase. She navigated the melody with confidence that belied her age, finding the rubato naturally, letting the music breathe. Catherine felt Daniel's hand find hers in the darkened audience. Squeezed once, hard. Then Lily hit measure 43 and played a wrong chord. Not slightly off, completely wrong. The kind of mistake that couldn't be recovered gracefully. She stopped. Her hands lifted from the keys. In the silence, Catherine could hear the child's breathing, fast and frightened. 10 seconds passed. 20. The judges waited, expressionless. Standard protocol. They couldn't help or hinder. Either Lily would recover or she wouldn't. Daniel's hand in Catherine's tightened until the bones ground together. His whole body was tense, every instinct screaming to go to his daughter. But he couldn't. Rules forbade it. 30 seconds. Lily's face showed panic. Then Daniel whispered, barely audible, probably breaking a dozen regulations. Remember what we talked about, sweetheart. Mistakes aren't failures. They're chances to show courage. Lily's head tilted slightly. Listening. Processing. She took a breath, placed her hands back on the keys, found the measure after her mistake and continued. Not from the beginning, from where she'd stopped. Acknowledging the error, but not letting it define her. The rest of the piece poured out with even more emotion than before, as if the mistake had freed something in her. The final phrases sang with a depth that made Catherine's chest ache. When Lily played the last chord and let it fade naturally into silence, not a person in that recital hall moved. 3 seconds of absolute stillness. Then Dr. Reeves stood, started applauding. The entire audience followed, rising to their feet. Not just polite recognition, genuine appreciation. They'd witnessed something rare. A child not just performing music but understanding it. Lily sat at the piano uncertain. Daniel rushed to her, wrapped her in his arms. You did it, sweetheart. You were perfect. But I messed up, Daddy. And then you kept going. His voice broke with pride. That's what made it perfect. Not the notes, your courage. The judges deliberated for 15 minutes, called all 8 auditioners and their families into the recital hall. Dr. Reeves spoke. This was an exceptional group. Choosing 3 students was nearly impossible. But we've made our decisions. She read 2 names Catherine didn't know, then Lily Cooper. Congratulations. The girl's face transformed. Daniel lifted her off her feet, spinning once before remembering they were in a professional setting. Catherine found herself crying, not caring who saw. Grace Washington approached them afterward. 70-something, elegant, with eyes that missed nothing. Your daughter is special, Mr. Cooper. Not just talented, wise. That recovery showed extraordinary maturity. Thank you, she's worked so hard. Grace turned to Catherine. And you must be the CEO who gave up everything to start a music school. Catherine blinked. How did you? The nonprofit world is smaller than you think. I heard about Harmony House, about what you're building. Grace handed Catherine a business card. Come see me next week. I want to talk about collaboration opportunities. They celebrated at Lou Malnati's, Lily's favorite deep dish pizza place. Lily was exhausted, crashed in the booth within minutes of ordering. Daniel and Catherine moved to the counter, let her sleep, ordered coffee, neither of them needed. Thank you. Daniel's words came quiet. For today, for everything, for seeing Lily as more than her disability. She taught me to see. Catherine wrapped her hands around the coffee mug, grateful for something to hold. Her and you both. You know what the strange part is? Daniel stared into his coffee. 6 months ago, I was emptying your trash cans. Now we're building a school together. Now you're... He stopped. Catherine waited, heart hammering. Now you're family. The word hung between them, weighted with possibility. Catherine chose the safer interpretation, the one that didn't require her to examine why her pulse had jumped. Lily's family too, to me. Daniel looked at her then, really looked, and Catherine saw the question in his eyes. The same question she'd been avoiding for weeks. What are we becoming? Before either could speak, Lily stirred. Are you two done being weird? Can we go home? They laughed, grateful for the interruption, drove back to their separate apartments. Catherine lay awake until 3 a.m., replaying the moment at the counter, wondering what would have happened if Lily hadn't woken up. 3 weeks later, Graham Porter walked into Harmony House. Catherine was teaching fundraising basics to Daniel, grant writing, donor cultivation, nonprofit accounting, when the receptionist buzzed. There's a Graham Porter here to see you? He says it's urgent. Catherine's stomach dropped. She hadn't spoken to Graham since walking out 9 months ago. Daniel looked a question at her. She shook her head. No idea. Graham looked older. The silver hair had gone white. His suit hung slightly loose, like he'd lost weight. But his eyes still held that private equity sharpness, calculating worth in microseconds. Catherine, you've built something interesting here. He glanced around the warehouse turned school, practice rooms, students' artwork on walls, the sound of multiple pianos playing different pieces simultaneously. What do you want, Graham? To talk. In private? He glanced at Daniel. Anything you say to me, you can say in front of Daniel. Graham's eyebrow rose, but he nodded. Fair enough. I'll get straight to it. Walsh Technologies is struggling. We've had 4 CEOs in 9 months. None of them lasted. Morale is basement level. Productivity's dropped 20%. Why are you telling me this? Because the board finally admitted what I should have seen from the start. The company needed you. Not your ruthlessness, your humanity, your ability to see people as... He paused, searching for words. As people, not resources. Catherine felt ice in her veins. If you're here to offer me my job back, I'm not. Graham's smile was thin. I'm here because I owe you the truth about something. About the ultimatum I gave you. About firing Cooper. Daniel's attention sharpened. Graham noticed, looked directly at him. There was no investor test. Vanguard Capital never cared about whether Catherine fired you. I made that up. The words detonated in the small office. Catherine stood slowly, blood roaring in her ears. You what? I fabricated the scenario. Graham's voice stayed level. I wanted to see if you'd choose the company over sentiment, if you had the ruthlessness to lead. So I invented a crisis. Told you Daniel was a test case. Told you the deal depended on your decision. Catherine's hands shook with rage. You made me think I had to choose between my career and destroying someone's life. You made me believe, and you chose to walk away. Graham met her fury calmly. You chose a janitor over your entire company. I thought you'd failed, thought you were weak. He looked around the school again. I was wrong. You passed a test I didn't know I was giving. You chose humanity over power. And look what you built. While Walsh Technologies crumbles, Harmony House thrives. Turns out people don't want to work for leaders who see them as expendable. Get out. Catherine's voice came deadly quiet. One more thing. Graham reached into his jacket, pulled out an envelope. This is a check for $500,000. Personal funds, not corporate. And a pledge to match any donations Harmony House receives this year, up to $1 million. He set the envelope on Catherine's desk. I'm not doing this for redemption. I'm doing it because my grandson was born 2 months ago. Jackson, beautiful boy. He has cerebral palsy. The doctors say he'll face challenges. Graham's voice cracked slightly. My son asked if I knew any good programs for children like Jackson. I said no. Then I read about Harmony House in the Tribune. He looked at Catherine directly. You were the best CEO I ever worked with. Not because you were ruthless, because you cared. I forced you to choose between success and humanity, and you chose humanity. I've spent my entire life making the opposite choice. Made millions, lost everything that mattered. Graham picked up the envelope, held it out. This won't fix what I did, but Jackson deserves a place like this. And maybe there's still time for me to learn what you already know. Catherine took the envelope with hands that wanted to throw it back. Wanted to tell Graham that money didn't absolve betrayal, that his grandson didn't erase the manipulation, that she hoped Walsh Technologies burned to the ground. But she looked at Daniel instead, saw him watching her, waiting to follow her lead, saw in his eyes the same choice she'd made 9 months ago, vengeance or grace, anger or mercy. She opened the envelope. $500,000. Enough to fund Harmony House for 2 years. Enough to expand to a second location. Enough to hire more teachers, offer more scholarships, reach more children. Enough to make Graham's betrayal feel almost worth it. Jackson has a place here. Catherine's voice came hard. When he's old enough, not because of this check, because every child deserves music. But Graham, she met his eyes. You and I are done. You don't get to buy your way into feeling better about what you did. This money goes to the school, not to absolving you. Graham nodded once. I understand, thank you. He left. Catherine stood holding the check, feeling like she'd swallowed glass. Daniel crossed to her, his hand finding her shoulder. You okay? No. Honesty felt necessary. He lied. For 9 months, I thought I'd made a real choice. Thought I'd sacrificed something meaningful. Now I find out it was all theater, all manipulation. Does that change what you built? Daniel's hand squeezed gently. Does it change Harmony House? The students we're teaching? The life you're living now? Catherine thought about the 15 children currently in lessons. About Lily's breakthrough at her audition. About Daniel teaching a boy with autism that piano could whisper. About waking up every morning with purpose instead of dread. No, the word came sure. It doesn't change any of that. Then Graham's lie doesn't matter. Daniel turned her to face him. They were close now, closer than they'd been since that night at Lou Malnati's. What matters is what you chose, what we chose, what we're building. Catherine looked up at him, saw in his face something she'd been trying not to see for months. Care, tenderness. The beginning of something that terrified her because it meant risking the careful balance they'd maintained. Daniel. He kissed her, gentle, questioning, giving her every chance to pull away. Catherine froze for one heartbeat, then leaned into it, her hands finding his shirt, pulling him closer. The kiss deepened, became an answer to questions neither had dared ask. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, a small voice came from the doorway. Finally, I've been waiting forever. Lily stood there grinning, her white cane propped against the wall. I heard everything. You two are so obvious. Can Catherine be my mom now? Daniel laughed, slightly hysterical. Lily, that's not, we've been building a family for 9 months. Lily's voice carried absolute certainty. You make Daddy smile for real. He makes you laugh. You both make me happy. What else do you need? Catherine knelt beside the girl. What if you want to think about it? Take some time? I've been thinking about it since the first night you let me play your piano. Lily's hand found Catherine's face, tracing features she couldn't see. You smell like jasmine and determination. You sound like someone who forgot how to fly and is learning again. You're already my mom. I just want it to be official. Catherine pulled Lily into a hug, felt Daniel's arms come around both of them. 3 people who'd been broken separately, forming something whole together. Something that felt like the home Catherine had been searching for since her father died 22 years ago. Okay. The word came out thick with tears. Okay. Let's be a family. Lily squeezed tight. Good. Now can we please eat? I'm starving. They laughed together, this strange new family, in a warehouse school built from sacrifice and hope. Outside, Chicago hummed its evening song. Inside, 3 pianos played different pieces simultaneously, students finding their voices through music. And Catherine thought, this is success. Not corner offices or board meetings or Forbes lists. This, love and purpose and children learning to be brave. Everything else was just noise. 6 months after Graham's check cleared, Catherine stood in the home she'd never imagined owning. Not the penthouse. She'd sold that for $800,000, using half to expand Harmony House and the other half as down payment on this three-bedroom Craftsman in Logan Square. Hardwood floors that creaked in the mornings. A backyard with an actual tree. 2 bathrooms that fought for hot water. A kitchen where all three of them could cook simultaneously, bumping hips and laughing. Daniel had moved in gradually. First a toothbrush in the guest bathroom, then work clothes in the closet. Finally, one Sunday in September, he'd brought the last boxes from his Southside studio, and Lily had declared, "Now we're really a family." They hadn't rushed anything. No engagement, no wedding plans, just 3 people learning to orbit each other's lives with grace. Daniel still woke at 5 a.m. out of habit, made coffee strong enough to strip paint. Catherine still worked brutal hours but came home now instead of sleeping at the office. Lily had her own room painted lavender. That's what Wednesday afternoons sound like, with a Braille library and a keyboard by the window. The music room held 2 grand pianos. Daniel's was a restored Yamaha they'd found at an estate sale, slightly out of tune, but with good bones. Catherine Steinway had made the move with professional movers who charged a fortune and been worth every penny. Friday nights they played together. Sometimes Chopin. Sometimes Lily's original compositions that mixed classical structure with jazz improvisation. Sometimes just scales while Lily conducted from the couch, calling out dynamics. "Daddy, softer. Catherine, you're rushing." Those were the good nights. The bad nights came when Catherine reviewed Harmony House's financials and watched the numbers bleed red. 30 students now, 7 teachers on payroll, 2 locations, the West Loop warehouse and a smaller space in Pilsen for overflow. Insurance premiums that doubled every 6 months because apparently teaching children with disabilities meant preparing for lawsuits from helicopter parents and opportunistic lawyers. Equipment costs that never stopped. Specialized benches, modified instruments, Braille music printing, accessible software. By December, they were $12,000 short for the month. Catherine had covered it from personal savings. January hit $14,000 short. February would be worse, $15,000 minimum, and she'd already drained most of Graham's initial donation, expanding too fast. The math was brutal. They needed $36,000 in the next 3 months, or they'd have to close 1 location. Fire teachers, turn away students. Catherine spent a Tuesday morning calling banks about loans. The 5th rejection came from First Chicago, a loan officer named Brad, who probably never worried about money in his life. "Ms. Walsh, your credit is excellent, but the business model isn't viable. Nonprofits serving high-risk populations don't generate sufficient return to guarantee repayment. I'm afraid we can't help you. We're not asking for venture capital. Just a bridge loan until our grant funding comes through." The answer is no. "I'm sorry." Catherine hung up, stared at her laptop screen showing the budget spreadsheet that had haunted her dreams for weeks. Felt the familiar panic rising. The same feeling she'd had at Walsh Technologies when quarterly reports came due and the numbers didn't match projections. Except this wasn't about shareholder value. This was about 30 children who'd found their voices through music. This was about teachers who believed in impossible things. This was about Lily and Daniel and the family they'd built from rubble. Daniel found her at the kitchen table at 2 a.m., laptop still open, wine glass empty beside 3 coffee cups. "You need to sleep. I need to find $36,000. Catherine rubbed her eyes, felt grit and exhaustion. "We're out of options. Banks won't loan. Grant applications take 6 months minimum. Our donor base is tapped out." Daniel sat across from her, his hands wrapped around her cold fingers. "What about a fundraiser? Something bigger than the small stuff we've been doing." "Like what? A bake sale? Selling Girl Scout cookies?" "Like a gala." His voice came steady, sure. "High-end event. Performances by our students. Silent auction. Tickets at $500 a head. We invite everyone. Old corporate contacts, wealthy families, philanthropists who fund arts programs." Catherine shook her head. Galas cost money to produce, money we don't have. Venue, catering, marketing, printing. We'd need 20,000 up front minimum. Howard Cho would let us use the warehouse for free. Students could perform, no professional musicians to pay. Parents could handle food, potluck style but fancy. Your old assistant at Walsh Technologies, didn't she go into event planning? Catherine's mind started calculating despite her exhaustion. Maria Santos. She'd kept in touch sporadically. Maria had mentioned starting her own business, corporate events mostly. Even if Maria did it cheap, we'd still need. Catherine pulled up a new spreadsheet, started estimating. 10,000 for basics, invitations, sound system, rental, insurance, licenses. Use what's left of my savings. Daniel's voice stayed calm. Daniel, no, that's your emergency fund. This is an emergency. He squeezed her hands. Besides, I believe in impossible things now. You taught me that. Catherine looked at him across the table. This man who'd given up Carnegie Hall for his daughter, who taught children the world said couldn't learn, who'd chosen her when she was still learning to choose herself. Okay. The word came out fragile but determined. Let's try. They spent January planning. Maria Santos agreed to consult for cost, calling it payment for the 6 months of maternity leave Catherine had approved when Maria was pregnant and Graham had wanted to fire her. Student parents volunteered everything: cooking, decorating, marketing through their networks. Catherine drafted 200 invitations personally, called every contact from her corporate days. Some hung up immediately. Others listened politely before declining. But enough said yes that by February 1st, they had 43 confirmed attendees. Not enough. They needed at least 80 to break even, 100 to hit their target. Daniel worked his magic through the disability community, reached out to doctors who treated Lily, therapists who'd recommended Harmony House, advocates who championed inclusive education. By mid-February, 62 confirmed, still short. Catherine sat in Maria Santos's office, a small space above a Polish bakery in Avondale, reviewing the numbers for the 20th time. Maria was 38, perpetually pregnant despite having only one child, with organizational skills that bordered on supernatural. You need a headline donor. Maria tapped her pen against the budget. Someone who'll give big enough that others follow. The herd effect. Rich people don't want to be first, but they'll pile on once someone leads. I don't know any major philanthropists. Yes, you do. Maria pulled out her phone, scrolled, turned the screen. Eleanor Chen sits on boards for Art Institute, Lyric Opera, Chicago Symphony. Her daughter has muscular dystrophy. She donated $2 million to Northwestern's Disability Research Center 3 years ago. Catherine's chest tightened. How do I even get a meeting with someone like that? You don't. Maria smiled wickedly. You invite her to preview our program. Private session, just her and you. Show her what makes Harmony House different. Then ask for money face to face. That's terrifying. That's fundraising. Eleanor Chen's assistant called back within 24 hours. Mrs. Chen would visit Harmony House on February 19th at 10 a.m. She had 1 hour. Catherine spent 3 days preparing. Created a presentation deck that showed impact. 30 students served, 7 teachers employed, 2 locations opened. Documented student progress with before and after videos. Children who couldn't hold pencils learning to play piano. Kids who'd been told they'd never succeed acclimating audiences with standing ovations. But the morning of the meeting, Daniel pulled Catherine aside. Don't just show her numbers. Show her music. What do you mean? Play for her. His hands found her shoulders, steadying. Your piano, not a student performance, you. Show her what music means to you. Why you gave up everything for this. I haven't performed for anyone except you and Lily in 22 years. Then it's time. His voice carried absolute conviction. Eleanor Chen doesn't need another PowerPoint presentation. She needs to understand what we're building here. And the only way to do that is to show her your heart. Catherine wanted to argue, wanted to hide behind data and statistics and safe corporate presentations. But Daniel was right. Numbers didn't move hearts. Music did. Eleanor Chen arrived in a town car, elegance personified at 70. Silver hair and a perfect chignon. Chanel suit that probably cost more than Harmony House's monthly rent. But her eyes were kind, and when she shook Catherine's hand, the grip was firm. Show me what you've built. Catherine gave the tour. Practice rooms where a boy with cerebral palsy played bass notes with his feet while a girl with autism discovered piano's whisper voice. The reception area where parents waited, swapping stories about doctors and specialists and small victories. The bulletin board covered in student artwork, drawings by children who couldn't see, paintings by kids who couldn't hold brushes normally. Eleanor watched everything, asked questions that showed she'd done research, knew about Catherine's resignation from Walsh Technologies, about Daniel's Juilliard background, about Lily's scholarship to Fulton Center. Impressive. But I fund many organizations. Why should Harmony House be different? Catherine led her to the main studio. The Steinway sat waiting, the same piano that had gathered dust for 2 years in her penthouse. She sat at the bench, felt Eleanor Chen's attention like a weight. You asked why we're different. I can't explain it with words. So let me show you. Catherine placed her hands on the keys, closed her eyes, began playing the Nocturne in E-flat major, not as Catherine Walsh, former CEO trying to impress a donor, as the girl whose father had taught her that music was the language of the soul, as the woman who'd heard a janitor play this piece and remembered what it felt like to be alive. She played the mistake Lily had made at her audition, deliberately this time. Let it ring out wrong, then continued, showing that errors didn't mean failure. They meant humanity, courage, the willingness to keep going when perfection shattered. The final notes faded. Catherine opened her eyes. Eleanor Chen sat with tears streaming down her face. My daughter Grace was 8 when she was diagnosed. Eleanor's voice came thick. Doctors said she'd be in a wheelchair by 12, dead by 20. She's 34 now. Married, works at the Art Institute teaching classes for children with disabilities. Every doctor was wrong. She pulled a checkbook from her purse, wrote slowly, carefully, tore out the check, and handed it to Catherine. $200,000, unrestricted funding. Use it however you see fit. Catherine stared at the check. Her hands shook. I can't. You just showed me why this matters. Eleanor stood, not with statistics, with truth. You reminded me that success isn't about what we achieve. It's about who we become in service of something larger than ourselves. She paused at the door. I'll see you at your gala, and I'm bringing 20 friends. After Eleanor left, Catherine sat at the piano and cried for 10 minutes straight. Daniel found her there, pulled her into his arms while she shook with relief and disbelief and overwhelming gratitude. You did it. You saved us. We saved us. Catherine's voice came muffled against his chest. You, me, Lily. Everyone who believed when belief made no sense. The gala grew from dream to reality with terrifying speed. They scheduled it for March 15th at the West Loop warehouse. Transformed the space with fabric draped from ceiling beams, string lights that turned industrial concrete into something magical. Set up a small stage, borrowed chairs from 3 different churches, convinced a sound engineer to donate his system for tax write-off purposes. Students would perform. Lily had written an original composition, 6 minutes of complex melody and harmony that she'd been secretive about for weeks. It's a surprise, she insisted when Catherine or Daniel asked. You'll hear it at the gala. By March 1st, they had 92 confirmed attendees. Sold tickets at $500 each, plus Eleanor Chen's $200,000, plus the silent auction with donated items, restaurant gift certificates, spa packages, a weekend at a Michigan lake house. Catherine's old world and new world would collide that night. Corporate executives sitting beside parents of disabled children. Wealthy philanthropists watching kids in wheelchairs play piano. 200 people witnessing what happened when someone chose purpose over profit. The morning of March 15th arrived gray and threatening snow. Catherine woke at 5, found Daniel already up, practicing the duet he'd arranged with Lily. She made coffee, stood in the doorway listening to them play together. Father and daughter, their hands finding harmonies that shouldn't work but did. You're both incredible. The words came soft, not wanting to disturb their music. Lily's hands stilled on the keys. Catherine, come here. Catherine crossed to the piano. Lily patted the bench beside her. Sit. We need to practice something. Practice what? You and your dad have the duet perfected, not that. Lily's face was serious. My composition, the one I've been working on. It's not a solo, it's for 3 people. Catherine's breath caught. You wrote it for all of us? It's called Harmony House, about a family that built itself from broken pieces, about finding home in impossible places. I need you to play it with us tonight. Lily, I can't. It's your night, your moment. It's our moment. Lily's hand found Catherine's. Please, I wrote the top voice for you. It's the part that was lost but learned to sing again. Daniel added, we've been practicing it for 3 weeks. Wanted to surprise you, but we need you to rehearse at least once before tonight. Catherine looked between them, this child who saw the world more clearly than most people with sight, this man who'd redefined every assumption she'd held about success and sacrifice. Her family. Okay, show me. They spent 2 hours at the piano. Lily's composition was extraordinary, technically complex but emotionally direct. Catherine's melody line wove through Daniel's bass and Lily's harmony, 3 distinct voices creating something impossible alone. The piece built to a climax that required all 3 of them playing fortissimo, hands flying across keys, then resolved into a quiet coda that felt like coming home. By the 5th run-through, they had it. Not perfect, Catherine still stumbled in measures 40 through 43, but real, honest, true. At 6 p.m., the warehouse doors opened. Guests arrived in evening wear, looking slightly uncertain about entering a space that usually smelled of piano polish and children's laughter. But Maria had worked magic with the transformation. Candles everywhere, fabric softening harsh concrete, scattered music stands holding flower arrangements. Catherine wore a simple black dress, elegant but not ostentatious. Daniel had rented a tux that made him look like he'd stepped out of his Carnegie Hall past. Lily wore navy blue with her hair in intricate braids, courtesy of 3 neighborhood girls who'd spent the afternoon playing beauty salon. By 7, all 92 guests had arrived, plus 18 walk-ins who'd heard about the event through word of mouth. The silent auction tables were mobbed. The wine flowed. Catherine worked the room with skills honed in 20 years of corporate networking, but deployed now for something that mattered. At 7:30, Daniel took the stage. Thank you all for coming. Tonight you'll hear from students who were told they couldn't learn music, that their disabilities made art impossible. Every person you'll see perform tonight proves that conventional wisdom is just another word for limited imagination. He introduced the first performer, a 5-year-old with Down syndrome who played Mary Had a Little Lamb with such concentration that the audience held its breath. Then a teenage girl who was deaf, playing a drum solo that shook the rafters. Then a boy with cerebral palsy whose modified piano setup allowed him to create melodies that made Catherine's eyes sting. Each performance carried weight beyond technique. These weren't just concerts. They were declarations of existence, proof that different didn't mean less. During intermission, the silent auction closed. Maria tallied numbers and whispered in Catherine's ear, $81,000. We're going to make it. Then came the final performance. Daniel returned to the stage. Our last piece tonight is a world premiere, an original composition by Lily Cooper, age 8. She's titled it Harmony House, and she'll be performing it with her family. Catherine's heart hammered as she walked to the piano. 3 benches arranged side by side, Lily in the middle, Daniel on her left, Catherine on her right. The audience shifted, uncertain what they were about to witness. Lily's hands positioned themselves. She counted them in, 1, 2, 3, and they began. The opening belonged to Daniel, deep bass notes that spoke of sacrifice and loss and choosing love over dreams. Then Lily entered with the middle voice, bright, complex, fearless. Finally, Catherine's melody soared above both, hesitant at first, then growing bolder as the piece progressed. The music told their story without words. 3 people broken in different ways, finding each other, building something impossible. The middle section grew chaotic, all 3 playing frantically, hands crossing, notes colliding, until Lily's theme cut through, organizing the K into beauty. Catherine felt tears streaming as she played. This was what her father had tried to teach her 22 years ago. That music wasn't about perfection. It was about connection, about saying things too large for language, about revealing your heart and trusting others to handle it gently. The final measures came, all 3 playing in perfect unison, hands finding the same chords, creating harmony from individual notes. The last chord faded slowly, naturally, no one rushing the silence that followed. 3 seconds. 5. The audience sat frozen. Then, the standing ovation exploded like thunder. Not polite appreciation, genuine awe. People weren't just clapping. They were crying. Catherine saw Eleanor Chen on her feet, tears streaming, saw parents of their students hugging each other, saw strangers moved by watching a family create beauty together. Daniel and Lily took their bows. Catherine started to stand, but Lily caught her hand. You too, your family. So Catherine stood between them, hands linked, accepting applause for something she'd never imagined possible. Being seen, being known, being loved not for what she achieved, but for who she'd become. As the applause faded, a voice from the back, "If I could have everyone's attention." Graham Porter stood near the entrance. Catherine's stomach dropped. She'd sent him an invitation out of obligation, never expecting him to actually attend. He looked old under the warehouse lights, diminished somehow, but he walked to the stage with determination. I'm Graham Porter. Most of you don't know me. 3 years ago, I was chairman of Walsh Technologies. I was also the man who forced Catherine Walsh to choose between her career and her humanity. The room went silent. Daniel moved closer to Catherine, protective. She chose humanity. Graham's voice cracked. I thought she was weak. I was wrong. He pulled something from his pocket, a photograph, held it up so the audience could see. This is my grandson, Jackson, born 6 months ago. He has cerebral palsy. Doctors say his life will be harder than most, that he'll face challenges I can't protect him from. Graham looked directly at Catherine. My son asked me if I knew any programs for children like Jackson. Good programs that would treat him as whole, not broken. And I remembered reading about Harmony House, about what you'd built after I tried to destroy you. He moved to the donation table, pulled out a checkbook. This is $500,000, plus I'm matching every dollar donated tonight, up to $1 million total. Not for redemption, not to feel better about what I did, but because Jackson deserves a world where people like you exist, where possibility matters more than limitations. Graham crossed to Catherine, extended the check. I can't undo my past, but maybe I can help build your future. Catherine took the check with hands that shook. Behind her, Maria was frantically calculating on her phone, whispered, "Oh, Siren." With Graham's match and Eleanor's donation and tonight's total, we're at $808,000. More than enough to save Harmony House, enough to expand, enough to hire more teachers, open more locations, reach more children. Catherine looked at Graham, this man who'd manipulated and betrayed her, who was trying now in the only way he knew how to become someone different. Jackson has a spot in our program. When he's ready. Her voice came clear. Not because of this donation. Because every child deserves music. But Graham, this doesn't fix what you did. Money doesn't buy absolution. I know. Graham's voice was steady. I'm not asking for forgiveness. Just a chance to be part of something that matters. He left without waiting for response. The gala continued, but Catherine barely registered it. She moved through the rest of the evening in a daze of disbelief and exhaustion and overwhelming relief. At midnight, after the last guest departed and the cleanup crew had gone home, Catherine sat on the warehouse floor surrounded by donation receipts and silent auction forms. Daniel found her there, pulled her to her feet. We did it. You did it. Catherine leaned into him, feeling the solid reality of his presence. You believed when I couldn't. You taught me that impossible just means nobody tried yet. We taught each other. His hands cupped her face, thumbs brushing away tears she hadn't realized were falling. You taught me it's never too late to dream again. That sacrifice doesn't mean surrender. That love is something you build, not something you are given. He kissed her then, deep and certain and full of promises neither had dared voice before. When they broke apart, Lily's voice came from the doorway. Are you two going to get married now? Because this seems like a good time. They laughed, slightly hysterical with exhaustion and joy. Maybe eventually. Catherine pulled Lily into their embrace. For now, can we just be us? I guess that's okay. Lily pretended to consider, but I want to be flower girl when you do. And I'm wearing purple. Non-negotiable. 18 months later, Catherine stood in the main practice room of Harmony House's third location, a renovated church in Englewood with stained glass windows and acoustics that made every note ring like prayer. 120 students now across 3 sites, 20 staff members, a waiting list of 200 families. Daniel had become nationally recognized for his teaching methods, consulting with music programs across the country. The Juilliard graduate, who'd spent 8 years as a janitor, now trained others how to make music accessible to children the world said couldn't learn. Catherine had published a book about their journey, not a business memoir, but something more personal. About the cost of success measured wrong, about finding purpose in unexpected places, about 3 people building a family from sacrifice and hope. The advance had funded Harmony House's expansion. The speaking engagements that followed brought awareness in donors and partnership opportunities. But the best moments were still the small ones. Friday nights at home, playing piano while Lily conducted from the couch. Sunday mornings making pancakes, Daniel burning them because he couldn't stop watching Catherine and Lily dance in the kitchen. The everyday miracle of being known completely and loved anyway. Today, Catherine taught a beginner class. 6 students, ages 5 to 8, all with various disabilities, including Jackson Porter, Graham's grandson, now 18 months old, and already showing interest in sounds and patterns. She guided Jackson's tiny hands to middle C. "Can you press this for me?" The toddler's finger found the key. Pressed. The note rang clear. Jackson's face lit with delight. The same expression Lily had worn at 8 when Catherine had first let her play the Steinway. "Good job, Jackson. That's music. You made that sound all by yourself." Graham watched from the observation window, his face doing complicated things. He came to every one of Jackson's sessions. Never missed. Sat quietly, taking notes, asking questions about how to support his grandson's development. He'd changed, not completely, probably not enough, but visibly. Learning to see people as humans first, challenges second. After class, Catherine found Daniel in his office reviewing applications for their new scholarship program. $8,000 annually for exceptional students who couldn't afford private lessons, funded by Graham's continued donations and Eleanor Chen's growing foundation support. How many applications this year? 273. Daniel rubbed his eyes. "We can only take 20, so we find funding for 40. Catherine sat on his desk, disrupting his paperwork. "We figure it out. We always do. When did you become the optimist?" "When I met a janitor who played Chopin like he was born to it, who taught me that skill matters more than credentials. That courage looks like getting up every day and choosing to believe in impossible things." Daniel pulled her down into his lap. "That janitor sounds impressive." "He's okay." Catherine kissed him softly. "But his daughter is extraordinary." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching through the window as students arrived for afternoon lessons. A girl with autism who'd discovered she could sight-read music better than most trained musicians. A boy with Down syndrome whose perfect pitch astounded professional vocalists. A teenager in a wheelchair who composed symphonies on specialized software. Every child proof that limitation was a story society told, not an absolute truth. Every family a testament to what happened when someone chose to see possibility instead of deficit. That evening, the 3 of them returned home to Logan Square. The house felt alive now, Lily's Braille books scattered across the living room, Daniel's sheet music covering the dining table, Catherine's laptop perpetually open on the kitchen counter. The organized chaos of people who actually lived rather than just existed. They gravitated to the music room without discussion. Friday night ritual. Daniel and Catherine at their respective pianos, Lily between them on a small bench, ready to conduct or join in as the mood struck. "What should we play?" Catherine's question was rhetorical. They always played the nocturne eventually, the piece that had connected them, the piece that had changed everything, the Chopin. Lily confirmed, the one that started it all. They positioned their hands. Lily counted, 1, 2, 3, and they played. Not perfectly. Catherine still stumbled occasionally. Daniel rushed the tempo in his enthusiasm. Lily added improvised variations that sometimes clashed beautifully. But perfectly wasn't the point. The point was 3 people who'd been broken separately, making something whole together. The point was a former CEO who'd remembered how to feel, a janitor who'd reclaimed his identity as an artist, A blind girl who taught them both how to see. The point was family, purpose, love measured in small moments and impossible choices, and the courage to keep playing even when you hit wrong notes. The final chord faded. No one rushed the silence. In that space between sound and stillness, Catherine understood finally what her father had been trying to tell her in his journal 22 years ago. Success wasn't about what you built or how much you earned or what titles you held. Success was this: sitting at a piano with people you loved, creating beauty from nothing, knowing that tomorrow you'd wake up and do it again. Not because anyone was watching or judging or keeping score, but because the work mattered, because the people mattered, because you'd finally learned to measure worth in terms that couldn't be quantified on spreadsheets. Daniel's hand found hers on the bench. Lily leaned against Catherine's shoulder. Outside, March snow fell soft on Chicago, covering the city in quiet. Inside, warmth and music and the sound of breathing. Thank you. Catherine's words came soft. For saving me. You saved yourself. Daniel's voice held absolute certainty. We just reminded you who you were, who you'd always been under all that armor. We saved each other. Lily's addition was matter of fact. That's what families do. They're not about being perfect. They're about choosing each other every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Catherine pulled them both close, felt the solid reality of their presence. Thought about the girl she'd been at 16, playing Chopin at her father's funeral. The woman she'd become at 38, locked in a corner office, measuring worth in dollars. The person she was now at 41, teaching children that different was just another word for possible. All the versions of Catherine Walsh had led here, to this moment, this family, this life built from rubble and hope and the radical choice to believe that people mattered more than profit. Her father had been right. Success meant nothing if you lost yourself. But finding yourself, that was everything. Daniel suggested hot chocolate. Lily demanded marshmallows. They moved to the kitchen, leaving the piano silent but not empty. Music lingered in the air like memory, like promise, like all the songs they'd played together tomorrow, and the day after, and every day that followed. Because this was what they'd built. Not just Harmony House with its 120 students in 3 locations and national recognition, but this, 3 people who'd learned to be brave together, who'd chosen love over fear, possibility over limitation, connection over isolation, who discovered that the most important things in life couldn't be seen on Forbes lists or balance sheets or success metrics. They could only be felt in the warmth of small hands finding yours in darkness, in melodies emerging from silence, in the daily miracle of being known completely and chosen anyway. And that was worth more than all the corner offices in the world.